I'm Janice Ellig, CEO of the Ellig Group, Executive Search Advisors, where we are reimagining search by our longstanding commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you for joining us today for another webinar in our series where we invite thought leaders and subject matter experts to lead us through these very turbulent times. Today's conversation, I'm delighted to speak with Katrina Adams, a pioneer of many firsts and an outstanding global speaker, author, award-winning leader, and former professional athlete. Katrina has a whole list of firsts that I can go through, but let me just go through a few that really distinguish her as an executive, as a leader. Katrina Adams is the first African-American and the youngest and a former player to lead the United States Tennis Association and the first two-term chairman and president of USTA. She is also vice chairman, president of the prestigious International Tennis Federation, chairman of the Billie Jean King Cup Committee, executive director of the Harlem Junior Tennis and Educational Program, board member of Pivotal Acquisition Corp. 3, board director GSE Worldwide, and an advisory board member of Athletes Unlimited. I know I'm going to embarrass her a little bit, but I'm going to say a few more things about Katrina because they really show how she has distinguished herself as a true leader in her field and in the boardroom. Most Powerful Women in Sports by Adweek, listed twice in 2016 and 2017. Forbes Magazine, Most Powerful Woman in Sports list in 2017, and Ebony Magazine's Power 100 list. Katrina Adams, I am delighted to welcome you here today to discuss not only your book, but your career, which is really phenomenal. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Janice, for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
And I hope your book is doing well. We're going to promote it on Amazon and get everybody in the audience to read it because it is phenomenal. But let me talk about the beginning of your career, because you were playing tennis at the age of 6, right? And you went pro in 1987. And then your career continued to evolve. Tell us a little bit about those beginning days and how that formed you into the leader you are today.
Yeah, so, I was lucky. I stumbled upon the sport, as I say. I was a tag-along sister. I had 2 older brothers that were actually enrolled in this particular program. I was too young because it was for 9 to 18-year-olds. But I was a tomboy, a great athlete at a young age, and just kind of bullied my way through the coaches and my parents to allow me to play. And I was fortunate. I went out. I loved it from the very first time. I had coaches that really took me under their wing and showed me the way, gave me my base in my game. And I was able to go from the beginning through high school state championship to Northwestern University NCAA champ, and then on to the professional tour, the WTA tour, for 12 years.
So was that a difficult time in your life to go as a pro, competing against other great athletes out there? That must have taken a lot of fortitude and a mental, focus on being as great as you could be on the field with so many other greats.
Our sport is very different from the other team sports, and you're kind of growing and progressing with your peers along the way. So, I had other players, American players that I'd grown up playing with and against on the junior circuit and in college that went on to be on the professional tour as well. And it's just kind of one step to the next, and you just kind of continue to develop and evolve and really understand that this is now a career. I mean, when you become a professional tennis player, you in essence are becoming your own CEO, because you're now managing your team, your coach, your physio, your nutritionist. Well, for the top players, if you're just getting out there, you barely have a coach. But it's really understanding how to manage your time, how to be disciplined, and really work on your craft.
So your career is not typical of most who are in a boardroom today. You were pro first, and then you go to the United States Tennis Association. You're a committee leader, and here you are then president and 2-time chair. How did this progression occur? I mean, to go from a committee leader all the way up to president.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, when I grew up playing tennis, I knew USTA tournaments, I knew USTA ranking, and I really didn't know a lot more about the USTA. I knew I played on some USTA sponsored teams, but when you're a kid and a teenager and even a young adult, you don't really understand the business side. But I was appointed to one of the committees, national committees, and I attended the annual meeting and started to meet all these different volunteers and other people that worked for the organization, and found it to be fascinating. And I ended up applying for the board, and I was appointed to the board as an elite athlete. And an elite athlete is a professional player within 10 years of retirement. And so I retired at the end of 99. I joined the board in 2005. And therefore I had that status until 2009. So I was reelected under the premise. But then I had to, I was really interested in going further, and I had to apply with, the masses around the country with all these great professionals in several fields. And I was appointed again. And so then I realized that I added value, that people really heard me and wanted to learn more. And so over time, being on the board and knowing more about the USTA and what we did, uh, I decided that I wanted to go further, and I applied to be the vice president as an officer. Became the first African American officer since 1993, and then I progressed onward. So it's a process, but it was really my passion for wanting to give back and make a difference, and having my voice as the leader of the organization, someone that came up through every step of the way in our sport. And then now I had a chance to turn around and be that leader.
Yes, you did learn every step along the way. In looking at your book, you talk about some of the behind the scenes things that go on at the USTA. And when you were president, which 2015 to 2018, you were really running the US Open that we all go and enjoy. But you talk about it as being running the Super Bowl for 14 days. Now, that has to give you a lot of stress in terms of everything that has to go on daily. So
Yeah,
talk to us a little bit about that behind the scenes and what does go on in putting a Super Bowl together for 14 days.
yeah, absolutely. As a chairman of the US Open, there's a lot of responsibility, but the good thing is that you have a huge staff, a very professional staff that know what they're doing. And, we really start planning for the US Open um, really the week or two after the Open, but really starting to focus on that annual one in March. And with weekly meetings or bi-weekly to start, then weekly meetings. And it's really a bunch of staff that are coming together on these different teams with different levels of responsibility, because you're talking about you have the tournament director, which is Stacey Allister. She's the first female tournament director, was appointed last year to that position, and this will be her second year. And so she has her staff, and everyone has a role within running the tournament from the player perspective. Then you have the other staff that are there for sponsorship, for ticketing, for hospitality, broadcasting, so many different responsibilities that really make the tournament run. You have food and beverage and merch. So when you think about it, you have all these different buckets that are really bringing in the revenue for the US Open, and hopefully selling out every day. And then the funds that we raise or make from the tournament then go back down into the grassroots level to actually run the USTA across the country.
So that's really given you a lot of insights into organizational behavior, organizational structures, how to operate. And when you're on a board of another company, you're really viewing that from that experience that you've had. Is there anything that was in your career really an aha moment, a telling moment that really said, I really learned so much from this? And maybe it was the 2018 controversial call of Serena Williams and Naomi Osaka, but that had to be something that was a real learning experience for you that you've taken with you over these years, correct?
That was definitely a learning experience. I mean, I have a background in broadcasting as well. I'm a tennis analyst and co-host on a CBS Sports Network on an all-female show called We Need to Talk. And so when you're put in that position and a mic is put in front of you, you know that it's not just the person that is handing you the mic. And you know that it's not just the people that are in the arena, in the stadium, but you're talking globally to the world. And that was definitely an incident or a situation that I had to think on my feet, literally, and really try to stay calm in that moment, because I had never been accosted by 20,000 fans that are booing at the introduction of the United States Tennis Open, and so that was unexpected for me. And in that moment, the mic is in front of me, and really trying to take light of the situation, and really applaud both players in their efforts for those 2 weeks. And then that day, and then having the controversy that occurred during the match, which was disappointing for everyone, for the players, for the fans alike. And it was a moment that no one wanted to see that happen. And I my words were misconstrued when I was referring to the outcome of the match, and I was really talking about the way that it finished with the on court debacle, more so than the score and who won the match. And that was something that I learned after, and recognizing that words matter. People can take them one way or the other. I had many people that didn't see anything wrong with what I said, knowing what I meant. And then there's always a pessimist that wants to dig in and find something negative. And those are the things that I've learned from how to overcome that kind of backlash, if you will.
So one of in our audience asked if you could just remind us what that call was, what happened, because some of us remember it vividly, but some of us, did
Yes,
not. So
absolutely. And of course, you read the book, so you know
yeah,
what I'm talking about.
yeah.
But in the finals of the 2018 U.S. Open against with Serena Williams and Naomi Osaka, there was a few code of conduct calls that were made in the match, and it has really started with Serena Williams getting a warning for coaching, and of which she said, I wasn't receiving coaching, I didn't see him, what have you. So in her mind, the warning didn't mean anything. And then at the end of the first set, I believe, Serena broke her racket, which is an automatic code of conduct. So that, because she was already in the code with a warning, the next infraction was a point, of which she really became irate about. And then further, actually, she just gotten broken in the second set when she broke her racket. And then she got into an altercation or a discussion with the chair umpire, of which she ended up calling him a thief for stealing a point away from her. And then he gave her an infraction of a game. And that's a progression in our code of conduct. So it went from warning, point, game. So instead of it being 4-3 in the second set down a break, now she's down 5-3, serving to stay in the match. And that's where, all hell broke loose, if you will, in that instance. And, to this day, a lot of people are criticizing the warning that was given. Coaches are coaching all the time in these matches, and it's happening in both player boxes. And so many of our chair umpires will kind of give a soft warning to the players and say, hey, there's a lot of activity I see in your box, or I'm hearing things, dial it down, or I'll have to give you a warning. Well, there was none of that. He just went straight to a warning. And this is on the biggest match, the biggest stage of our sport. And so it was hugely controversial.
And the booze that occurred, it was, yeah, it was very disturbing, I think, for everybody, as you said. So that was one moment. Take us to what made you write the book. What prompted you? What did you want to convey to your readers?
I was actually I was actually really encouraged to write the book from many people. For a couple years, people kept saying, Kat, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. And I said, I'm not writing a book. Why am I going to write a book? I don't need to write a book. And so, over time, I ended up building a relationship with a literary agent. And once we started to talk about what the book would be about, let's approach it from a leadership perspective, because you have a lot to tell, and hopefully people can learn from it. Then I started to listen and think about it, and said, yeah, I would love to do that. And I thought about how I could take my experiences from what my sport, tennis, really taught me at a very young age and throughout my career, that has prepared me for so many different elements and stages of my career thus far. from, from the life skills that you learn in tennis, from the discipline and the self motivation and building your self esteem and self confidence. You lose a lot more matches in tennis than you win until you get to the top. And so you learn from those losses and you build on them to take them forward for the next match or for your next contract or deal or meeting, whatever it may be in the field of the business that you're in. And so that was really why I decided to write it. It ended up being 12 chapters, so 12 match points. Actually, it started off to be 14 chapters because we were going to talk about the 14 day Super Bowl. And as the book, progressed, it ended up being 12. We cut a lot of it out. And so the 12 winning match points are really takeaways that I think the readers can take from the book that they can apply to themselves or ask themselves these questions. You know, are they owning the table? Are they owning their network? Are they owning their courage and their voice and their possibilities? Because these are all the things that, if you really think about, we need to do to be able to excel, particularly as women, when we're talking about owning our voice and being heard and speaking up. But make sure that when we're speaking, we're knowledgeable about whatever the topic is, so that people want to listen and respond and really respect us. And too often, you're invited to the table for a reason, right? But then you'll go and you'll sit back and you don't say anything. So it's really talking about those different elements to help people be better leaders and be better professionals in their fields.
Right. So you have chapters like own the table, own this your success, and it's all under the book of own the arena, right? So when you look at some of the lessons and the advice that you have in there, are there 5 key points that you would share with our audience today in terms of really owning that success at whatever table or arena you're in?
Yes, because the arena can be any place that you deem it to be. It's your home, it's your office, it's your car. I mean, it's your gym, whatever that space is. And for me, people always say, Kat, when you walk into any place that you walk in, you own the room. And
And I
so
can
we
attest
took
to
a
that.
pardon me? You
I
can
can
attest to that.
attest
There
to
you
that. Me
go.
too.
And so and that's just and not everybody has that self-confidence that I have, or it can exude that where they go. But the arena can be any place. And of course I'm in the sports world, so that's kind of a play on it. But when you're talking about owning the table, as I mentioned, you're at the table for a reason. And I'm not at the table to automatically be the chair, but I'm at the table to contribute, to add value and to be heard. And that's what we want. That's what I want my readers to understand, that you're there for a reason. So take advantage of it. And you never know where it's going to take you if you are prepared for that conversation. For me, owning your courage is one of the biggest ones, because you have to have the courage to speak up. You have to have the courage to put yourself in certain spaces, in certain arenas, to provide the opportunities for yourself. And again, as women in particular, sometimes that, we're saying, not sure I can do that. You're going for a job, and we may check 4 of the 5 boxes and say, oh, I'm not qualified. I can't, I can't go in for that interview. I'm not qualified. But our male counterparts have 2 of the 5 and say, oh yeah, I can do that. Yeah, no problem. And it's how you approach it. And so that's what I want the readers to get from that. Owning your voice, speak up, and own the possibilities, because the opportunities that are out there are endless if we apply ourselves to move forward. But I think one of the most important things that I talk about in the book is having a personal board. And my personal board are colleagues and friends that I can lean on, reach out, call, text, write, whatever it may be, in this different disciplines that I may not be a strength of mine. And so I can lean on them and ask questions, or get some feedback from people that have no skin in the game, but only wanted me to do my best, and people that aren't afraid of saying, no, no, you're going down the wrong path, or you might want to rethink that. And I think we all need that. And your personal board is really only about 5 or 6 people. It could be 3 or 4, but it's really those people that you can trust. And they're different from your network. Your network or your colleagues that you work with, whether it's in your own company or in the same industry that you're networking with to learn more and be more engaged and involved. And then I talk about your village, which is really your family and friends that are there to support you, and kind of, make you feel good about yourself. But those are all things that you will find in the book and stories that relate to them. And I think they can relate to any reader that is reading it.
Yeah, right. You talk very, poignantly about your family, the friends, that support network. But it is important for women to lean on others, isn't it, when they're not quite sure the path to take. And sometimes we don't always do that, or sometimes we overdo it and listen too much to others. So, what is your advice to women who, yeah, need to feel like they have to have all 10 competencies? We find this in executive search. Men oftentimes will throw their hat in very quickly. Women do not. I'll call men and women for roles. Men will respond a little more quickly than women sometimes. It's sort of like, morning, why aren't you calling me back? I have a great opportunity for you. Uh, as an athlete, though, another aspect of your career has been, you were prepared or you practiced a lot. So while we say to women, raise your hand for the job, you also have to be prepared, correct? You have to have that intellectual curiosity as well as those competencies to take on a role. What's your advice there on practice, practice, practice to get better so you can be at the table?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's a great question, and and again, because I'm that athlete and a professional athlete, my approach is very different than someone that may not play sports at all. But it is making sure that you're prepared when you walk in the room, making sure that you're prepared for that conversation. Know who you're going in the room with. Make sure that you've done there's too many tools at our fingertips now, between LinkedIn and Google and other platforms, that we can get some background on people and maybe find that hobby or something that you have something in common with. And because if you're nervous going into a conversation, not perhaps the meeting, but the pre meeting, and you start to talk about, oh, I see you play tennis. How long have you been playing? And oh, well, I played a couple years, my kids play. And then that kind of breaks the ice. So then when you get into the actual meeting, you're a lot more relaxed. But it's really about being calm, being confident in your delivery, and making sure that you are prepared. And sometimes we can bluff our way through a lot of meetings, but there's always going to be that one meeting that you just can't bluff your way through because you really need to have specific data on different things. And that's what's the key for me and how I've operated.
You have made a major impact on tennis. It was your profession. It still, remains with you. It's a passion for you. You've also nurtured those in underserved neighborhoods to try and build up the diversity of the tennis players and of the association. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing there and what we might do to help in that regard.
Well, I'm the executive director of the Harlem Junior Tennis and Education Program. We are 49 years young. I've been there 15 years. And we are an inner city program based in Harlem that are really using tennis as the hook to get the kids in the program. We have tennis, education, and wellness. But our goal is to build champions in life, not just champions in tennis, with a success rate of getting our kids into college on either tennis scholarships or academically, or just making sure that it's on their CV. I mean, can you imagine when you're looking at, or this, Dale, but if you're looking at the application of a college entrant, and you see that they've been in a program for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, that automatically sets them apart because it shows that they have discipline and that they have passion for something. And it's a kind of personality that you may want in your institution as a student. And so we are making sure that we are providing these skills, these life skills for these young people to be successful. And it's been a tough year. I mean, through 2020, we were closed most of the year. Um, we weren't able to have our gala like so many youth organizations around the country. And so we're trying to get back on our feet, raising money. Donations are welcome, and making sure that we can provide these youth what's needed to succeed.
So tell us a little bit about, you're influencing these young athletes, these maybe who are going to tennis or other sports. Tell us about those who have influenced you, what you learned from them growing up and then during your career.
Well, my parents have been my base. I was very fortunate. I had two supportive parents that just wanted me to be happy and gave me the opportunity to go further in my sport. They made a lot of sacrifices. They gave up a lot to make sure that I had a lot, and I had older siblings as well. And so, they were my guiding force. But I was also fortunate to have so many other people that really brought me along the way. But as I progressed and came through as a professional. I mean, Billie Jean King is one of my mentors, a great friend of mine. Just sitting and listening to her is you can't help but learn. You're like a sponge trying to absorb so many anecdotes that she's sharing with you to help guide you and continue to build my confidence. And I think if anytime you can have someone like that in your life, and it doesn't have to be a Billie Jean King, but someone that can offer you that kind of guidance and leadership. And she never tells me what to do. She always asks me, how am I going to do it, and how am I going to get there? And I think that's just putting the onus back on me to be accountable for my behavior and my actions going forward.
Billie Jean spoke at the Women's Forum of New York, Breakfast at Corporate Champions, several years ago, and she had a speech prepared, and she got up there and she said, "Oh, forget this." She said, "Let me just tell you, women, you've got to have a voice, you've got to get out there." And she was just very direct about, you know, just making sure that you just do it. And the how is really important, isn't it, Katrina? I mean, in terms of how you go about getting to that next step. Were there were there instances that you learned along the way on the how to do it, how to get there, that were would be valuable to our audience?
I think a lot of it for me was kind of learning along the way. The subtitle of the book is Getting Ahead, Making a Difference, and Succeeding as the Only One. And for me, referencing either the only woman or the only African American or person of color in a room or in an arena. And so you have to be able to figure out how to navigate through those audiences. And Janice, you know what that feels like, being the only woman in so many of your meetings and surroundings. And so it's the confidence that we exude that allow us to get through those situations. But it's, again, we go back to preparing and making sure that we speak up. I talk about in the book a situation where I was in a meeting, a board meeting with maybe 8 other men, and I was speaking and I said something, and one of the men said, "Thank you for sharing your wisdom. I never looked at it that way." And so I leaned in and said, "Of course not. You're not a woman." And so, we need diversity of thought. And I think that's the biggest thing that we can take away, not only from the book, but from just us as business women, and understanding that we have to have diversity of thought in our meetings, in our spaces, so that we can reach the masses and not just think narrow with one narrow audience.
Katrina, one of the things you keep mentioning is this confidence level, this self-confidence. And not every, I'm going to speak about women, not a lot of women sometimes have that, or they don't think they have it. And sometimes we as women don't promote other women as much as we should. Uh, where did your self-confidence come from? That it's really deep. And I've been in meetings with you, I see it, you walk it, you talk it. And and particularly now with a lot of young women and young men too, in terms of developing that self-confidence, say, yes, I can do it. If I practice or if I put my mind to it, I can get there. This is how I'm going to do it. What's your advice for that overall inner core and metal of self-confidence?
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of it is innate. I think I was born that way. My family always called me, there's a chapter in the book called Baby Woman, because when I was young, they said, my mom used to say, "You've been here before." She goes, "I don't know how you can think of that or do that. You're older than your years." And I've always had that demeanor about myself, and have taken that confidence everywhere. But I think, for the women who aren't really born with that kind of confidence, it can be taught. I mean, because I'm dealing with it in tennis, the kids that we work with, not everybody has that confidence. And so we're trying to encourage them to always have a positive attitude, always have a plan. And if the plan doesn't work, we can go back and work on another plan. Or if that tactic doesn't work, we can change the tactics. And so we have to be willing to evolve, and always and change and alter our direction as needed. But when we're narrow and we just want to stay on that narrow path, and we're not able to venture out, then we're only stifling our growth and development. But if you allow yourself to step outside of the box just once or maybe twice to see how that feels, then we'll start to build more confidence within ourselves because we realize that that wasn't so bad. Let me try to take another step forward. And make sure that you're surrounding yourself also with people who are optimistic and not pessimists, because I think that's the key. It's all about who we surround ourselves with as well.
An advisory board is really important to have in the family and friends. And so you've had failures along the way. You didn't win all the games, right? So you had to pick yourself up. So what's some of your parting words in terms of advice to our audience about their success, their happiness, their careers, particularly during these difficult times?
Yeah, I think, as we continue to move forward during this pandemic and what's going on, and there's a lot of uncertainty out there and a lot of disappointments. And I always say you learn from your losses. If you allow yourself to reflect, understand why you lost, why you did not get this contract, why you didn't get this job, etc., that's the only way that you can learn to move forward. Too often, when we're just winning and we're succeeding, we never reflect on what went well. We're just, we're in cloud nine and always saying, of course I did this, of course I did that. And you're not really slowing down to say, okay, what did I do well that got me to this point? And so, if we can just slow down sometimes and really go inward and reflect on how we did things or did not do things, I think that will help us succeed and take us to the next level. And not everybody wants to keep going up. A lot of people get to a certain plateau and they are perfectly fine. But you still have to be at a certain level to stay here because there's always someone else there to push you out. But as women in particular, we have to make sure that we're reaching back and pulling forward because our male counterparts do it all the time. And if we're not really supporting our fellow women in the boardroom or in the C suites, and making sure that we're bringing others in, don't be concerned about them taking over your role. And I think we as women do that. Men, they don't have that problem. They're bringing their boy in left and right, and they're confident in in their abilities. We have to be confident in our abilities too, but make sure we start filling these rooms and offices and businesses with more women, particularly in the C-suite.
Well, that's what we're trying to do at the Ella Group, more women in the C-suite and the boardroom. And your book, Own the Arena, Getting Ahead, Making a Difference, and Succeeding is the Only One, is a must read for everybody because you are showing us the path forward and how to make it happen and to do it the right way. And as one of my dear friends, Maggie Wilderotter, who has been on many boards, but she says as she's moving up company, she's got a hand behind her pulling another woman with her. So we need to do the same thing. Katrina Adams, thank you so much for joining us today. It was wonderful, and we all look forward to reading your book and then posting a review, which I know will be fabulous. Thank you for all your words and wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Janice. Really appreciate it.